Thank you, Jeanette. That's one of my favorite Unity songs. We could sing that more often, just a request. So now it gives me great pleasure to welcome our guest speaker today, Reverend Margie Brach, who comes to us from Sacramento. And she spoke with us on a kind of semi-regular basis pre-pandemic. And we haven't seen her in 6 or 7 years. So it's wonderful that we're able to gather again and have Reverend Margie with us. She and her husband, Reverend Bob Brach, I think became Unity ministers at the same time. Is that?
A couple years apart.
Oh, a couple of years apart. Okay. So yes, they've been living in Sacramento for quite a while. So her topic today, Imagine That. And I'm so looking forward to your talk, and let's give Reverend Margie a warm welcome, please.
Much, Sue. Okay, sounds great. Wow, it's nice to be here and see everyone. Oh, it is a beautiful morning. And just so you know, 99.9% of the drivers on the road were very nice today. Oh, I gotta adjust that mic. Oh, yeah. And you know, life has just been giving me practice opportunities lately. All these things we know and we learn in Unity, and it just seems like there's been a lot of things that could distract me. I could go this way or go that way in my thinking, and it's been really helpful to come back to some of our really basic Unity teachings lately. I was pondering one of those teachings a while back, and my younger sister came over to visit, and she was so excited to tell me about a funny thing she saw on Facebook. And she said, so, imagine yourself in a room, no windows and no doors. How do you get out? Stop imagining that. I didn't know my younger sister was a Unity student. I had no idea. But what a perfect example. This idea that the thoughts we think make a big difference in the experience we have in the world, just like we talked about in our Unity principles. You know, the way I was brought up to think about this in Unity was, it's a phrase. It's called the law of mind action. Some of you may be familiar with that. There's a little phrase that just kind of would roll off our tongues back in the day. Law of mind action. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. And it was interesting to me. I was, when I was back at ministerial school in Unity Village, there were things I learned from my instructors, but there were a lot of things I learned from other classmates too. And one day, one of my classmates, because we all had that little rhyme for a law of mind action, and we would pull it out, you know, and throw it around. And one of my classmates one day said, well, you know, that book, The Revealing Word, that has all these definitions of terms that Unity ministers and teachers and students have been using as a reference for years, does not include law of mind action. And it was so much a part of the Unity lexicon. We were all shocked. But this classmate said, no, the same idea is expressed there, but in a different way. And there it's called the law of attraction. It says that all conditions and circumstances in our affairs and bodies are attracted to us in accord with the thoughts we hold steadily in consciousness. Now, there's controversy among Unity scholars. Are we attracted to those conditions, or are they attracted to us? But the idea is the same. It's those thoughts that we keep going back to in our minds that tend to form and shape our experiences in our bodies and in our lives. And one of the powerful ways we can focus our thoughts is through imagination. For those of us familiar with some of the early Unity teachings, we've got these things called the 12 powers. And one of those powers that we all have within us is this idea of imagination. And this is based in ancient scripture. When we look to the Gospel of John, we read about a time when Jesus has been acknowledged as a great spiritual leader by his cousin, John the Baptist. And he's going about and he's collecting followers. And we find these words there. When Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him, he said of him, "Here is truly an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." And Nathanael asked him, "Where did you get to know me?" And Jesus said, "I saw you under the fig tree before Philip called you." That story has always been a little off to me until I was able to find some spiritual significance, like the meaning beneath the literal word. And let me just ask, how many of you have ever seen a full-grown fig tree? They get heavy with leaves and fruit, and those branches can reach all the way down to the ground where you can't see the trunk of that tree. Philip was completely concealed in that tree. And if we look at the spiritual meaning of this, we sometimes call it the metaphysical meaning of the story. It's easy to interpret this as meaning that the divinity within us, the Christ within, can see and understand the character of a thing, can recognize something before it comes forward, before we see it with our physical eyes. And I know we've all experienced that in one way or another. How many times have we been thinking about a friend or a loved one, and all of a sudden we're getting a phone call, all of a sudden we're getting a message from them? How many times have we thought about something happening in our lives and pop, it shows up just like that? It's nice when it's something positive, I've got to say. But it happens to us all the time. And, one of the things I was nervous about when I was really new to Unity, it's like, oh my gosh, if I think about something, it'll happen in my life. Well, there's a lot of thoughts that run through my head that are not what I want showing up in my life. And someone pointed out to me, it's the thoughts that we hold steadily in consciousness. Those are the ones that show up more likely than just those passing thoughts. And thank goodness. But someone pointed out to me one time, they said, if you want to monitor your thoughts, because a lot of things run through our minds, right? They said, set a timer. And when the timer goes off, ask yourself, what was I thinking? And we can start to notice, where are my thought patterns running on their own? Because then we can work with it. Then we can say, now, is that what I want to imagine in my life? Or do I want to focus somewhere else? I really appreciate Unity teachings. And this one called the law of mind action, when you think about a law is something that just naturally is happening in our lives and in our world in a spiritual sense. But there's also this other concept in Unity called grace. And grace means we never fully manifest the results of our errors. If it's errors in our thinking or however we show up, we can always change our mind. We can always focus another way and bring ourselves back to where we want to be with our thinking and with what we're bringing forward in our world. And some of us get these ideas in Unity. It's an idea that's also in yoga. in unity, we think of the 12th power of imagination as being focused here on our forehead, and the Apostle Nathaniel, and just like the Bible story, the Fillmore teachings about that. In yoga, it's called Ajna, the sixth chakra. And it's this perception center. It's this place where we imagine and we visualize what can be happening in our lives. And maybe we get these ideas from these spiritual practices, but some people get them other places. Some people get them in books and in movies. And one particular person's story really stood out to me with this idea. And she was born in the early 1940s in Brooklyn, New York, in the Flatbush neighborhood, which when she was growing up there, they called it the projects. And when she was very young, her father died. And she was grieving, her mother was grieving, and her mother was not a nurturer. Her mom quickly remarried a man named Lou Kind. But he was not a kind person. And as it turned out, this little girl felt very emotionally unsafe at home. And she didn't look like the other kids. She didn't dress like the other kids at school, so she didn't really feel emotionally safe at school or at home, but she was a hard worker. And after one particular experience at home one day, she went and she laid down on her bed, and she had a mystical experience. She absolutely knew, it just washed through her in that moment, that if she was going to have a different kind of life, she was going to need to figure some things out for herself. And she carried that with her, worked hard in school, ended up getting a job when she was 13 years old as a cashier in a restaurant. And when she had a little pocket money, the world opened up to her. One of the great things her stepfather had done was bought them a television. And when she saw the performers on TV singing and acting, she absolutely knew that's what her life was going to be. At age 14, she took herself to Manhattan and saw her first Broadway show. And at that point on, she was going to a show every week. She was immersing herself in all the best music. Her favorite songs were ones that were like a 3-part play. And she bought all the music she could. She went to all the films she could. She tried to get cast in the school productions, but she didn't look like those other kids, and she never got a part. But she started reading the trade journals, and she saw something called summer stock, and she wanted to go. $150. Her mom said no. But then she reminded her mom, "You know, Mom, Grandpa left me $500. And that little girl was off to summer stock before she even graduated high school. There she started meeting people. She got walk-on parts, and she started to see the world and the possibilities in a different way. When she came back home, she was just craving a teacher. She was craving people she could learn from and collaborate with. And she found them. And they began to see the talent in her. And she started to have opinions about what would make performances better. And this was a very male-dominated culture. And they weren't always very interested in what this young girl thought. But one time she was reading a book about theater, and she found an idea in there that she absolutely knew to be true. And the idea was that thought transcends matter. Thought transcends matter. She had had an experience with that. One time when she was sick, and her mom didn't want to hear about it when she was sick, but she was feeling really bad. She was feeling this weight on her chest, and it was just intense. And she found out there was a doctor in the projects where she lived, and she absolutely knew that if she went to that doctor's office and asked for help, that she would feel better. It took her the longest time to go up and ring the bell at this doctor's office. And when she did, the doctor wasn't there. But the most amazing thing happened. Because when she rang the bell and asked for help, the pressure in her chest went away. So she knew that thought transcends matter. She knew it from her own experience. She ended up, her teacher that she found was challenging her to perform. And the first time she sang for her teacher, she had to turn around and look the other way. She couldn't look in the faces of people who were going to be listening to her. But they were so impressed, they challenged her to enter a talent contest at a club. And she was so relieved that because the lights were on her, she couldn't see the faces of the people in front of her. She sang. She won the contest, $50 and a free dinner, and she was hooked. She knew she wanted to keep doing that. She kept going back. She kept winning the contest over and over again. And then they hired her to sing 2 nights a week. And then someone from another club heard her sing and invited her to audition there. And she started singing at this other club. She was able to move out of the projects to Manhattan, and her opportunities opened up even more. She ended up being cast in a Broadway play, and then later cast in a lead role. And she's continued to go back to this idea that thought transcends matter. She's seen a lot of difficulties in her life, but still today, world-known singer-songwriter, actor, director, producer, Barbra Streisand is one of the best-known performers in the world. And in her book, My Name is Barbara, she quotes Johann Wolfgang von Goethe as saying this: "At the moment of commitment, the universe conspires to assist you." When we consciously focus our thoughts and our imagination on where we want to go, it makes all the difference for us and for so many more. And not all of us are going to be big celebrities, but these are very practical tools for our lives. I had an experience of this recently that really, I think it'll always stay with me. And one of the great gifts for me in recent years has been that one of my dreams from childhood has been to study art. And my career went a different way, but now I've been going back and I've been taking 1 art class each semester. And I'm so grateful for my beloved husband, Reverend Bob. You know, he fully supports me in doing this. And I still have these great memories of our wedding 23 years ago. And the rings he gave me, you know, for engagement or wedding have such meaning for me because they're a symbol of that love and that connection and that mutual support we share. Well, I've been taking a lot of ceramics classes, and I learned that if I'm working on the potter's wheel, if I don't take my rings off, eventually they're going to wear away to nothing. And I figured out a system. And the system, it's a little cloth pouch with a string in it that I can wear around my neck. I can put those rings in there. I can have them right next to my heart. And when my hands are clean again, then I can put my rings back on and off I go. Well, I was in this one art class, and it was a sculpture class. And the room was not very big, and I was at one end of the room, and the sink was at the other end, and there was really no way to get through. Well, we had got started with this clay sculpture. It was sticky, particularly sticky clay. My hands were covered in it, and I realized I still had my rings on. Well, my little pouch was in my backpack, down at the bottom. To dig through there, I would have gotten clay on everything. And the sink was inaccessible, and so I thought, okay, I've got these deep pockets on my jeans, so I took off my rings, I tucked them deep in my jeans pocket, and I was sure they'd be fine there. And I loved that class so much, and so after class, I stopped in the restroom, and then I was on my way home, and it was only later that I was at home, and I realized I hadn't put my rings back on. And I went, I got my jeans out of the laundry basket, put my hand in the pocket, and my rings weren't there. So I went through the laundry basket, and I shook everything out, and my rings weren't there. I looked at the floor around the laundry basket. I patted around under the furniture, and my rings weren't there. And in that moment, I remembered sitting in that bathroom after class and hearing a small metallic object hit the floor. And I looked around, I didn't see anything, and I just went on my way. But when I remembered that, I was sure that I'd left my rings in that restroom at the college. I got back to the school as soon as I could. I searched that women's restroom. I reached out to the arts and department, and I went to Lost and Found, and I went to the campus police, and my instructor said put signs up in the bathrooms, and I did, leaving my phone number everywhere. And the days were going by, and I just was devastated. And I was doing my best to look at it spiritually. I was telling myself, some student found that, and they needed that to pay their rent. Or some underpaid custodian saw this as a way to pay their utility bill or feed their kids. I tried to look at it through a spiritual lens, but I just could not get myself out of that place of sadness. And I was talking to a friend on the phone one day. Bob was holding it in prayer, other friends were holding it in prayer, but this one particular friend, she said, maybe you should consider the possibility that you will find it. And I got off the phone with her, and then I remembered the law of mind action and the power of our imagination. And I closed my eyes. And you know how when you're wearing a hat, you take it off, it feels like you still have the hat on. Closed my eyes, and I could feel the weight of the ring on my finger. I could feel the way it flopped over and onto my little finger. And I imagined myself holding it in my hand. And almost immediately after taking that time, just to imagine it being restored to me, I had a thought. And the thought was to go to the closet, put my hand in a particular spot under my cedar chest. And I went there, put my hand in that exact spot, and there were the rings. As long as I was convinced they wouldn't come back to me, I couldn't find them. But from the moment I focused and remembered and imagined, I knew exactly where to go. This is the power of our minds, the power of our thoughts, the power of our imagination. And we may go running down the road of negative thinking and not being able to remember there's good possibilities ahead, but we can always come back because there's grace. And our abundant good is always there, available for us for us and for so many more. Bless you, friends. Let's take those thoughts into meditation. So if you're comfortable with closing your eyes, I invite you to do that now. Or if you like having your eyes open instead, then maybe focus on the candles here. And let your gaze be soft. If you're gazing outside yourselves, or if you're looking within, I encourage you to look with gentle eyes, with eyes that know that there is good beyond the appearances of life. If there are any distressing circumstances, any troubled situations, let's look with gentle eyes, knowing there's more. There's more for us to see. There's more for us to know than how things may appear in this moment. And let's just notice now if we have tension in any area of our body, any tightness, any feeling of constriction. And with your next breath, just imagine that breath going to that part of your body. As we breathe in, we know that is inspiration. With every breath in, we bless that part of our body. And we feel it relax. Gently, gently, releasing any concerns. Gently, letting go. And we may even start to notice the beating of our heart. These amazing functions of our body that happen without us even having to think about them. This wonderful breath, this wonderful nourishment of our bodies without a conscious thought, and trusting and knowing that this presence and power blesses us in every moment, allows us to focus on what we do desire in our lives, in our minds, in our hearts, and in our world. With every breath, with every beat of our heart, we feel ourselves settling in even more right where we are, knowing God is present and active in all things, in all people, in our bodies, in our minds, in our hearts, in our families, in community. And we rest knowing this, the support within, the support beneath, the support around and among us, sustaining us as we rest in the silence. And we are grateful. We're grateful to know that wherever we've been, whatever we've seen or known in our lives, that it's brought us to this place, this physical place, but also this place in consciousness, this place of knowing the truth of who we are, that each and every one, we are the beloved of God, in whom God is well pleased, and that as we remember these truths together, we create blessings for ourselves, for our families, and our community, and in the larger community. Collective prayer, collective blessing, and we imagine the best that is yet to come. And so it is.